Welcome to Congressional Connector TV with your host, Congressman Sander Levin.
I will head home and look family straight in the eye and say the federal government is on your side, providing support during this downturn and making key investments for the future.
And now here's your host, Congressman Sander Levin.
Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about Chrysler and the importance of the Chrysler alliance with Fiat, and also about the bankruptcy proceedings and what's going to be happening these next days. And I'm joined by John Bozzella. You're the Senior Vice President of Chrysler for External Affairs and Public Policy. John, thanks again for joining us.
Congressman, thank you.
As you know, on April 30, just some weeks ago, the President spoke to the nation about the importance of Chrysler and about its future. And I want our viewers to be able to hear what the President had to say, these very important words.
Today, after consulting with my auto task force, I can report that the necessary steps have been taken to give one of America's most storied automakers, Chrysler, a new lease on life. This is a company that has a particular claim on our American identity. It's a company founded in the early years of the American automobile industry, a company that helped make the 20th century an American century, and that came to embody, along with the two other members of the Big Three, the ingenuity, the industriousness, and the indomitable spirit of the American people. And Chrysler has not only been an icon of America's auto industry and a source of pride for generations of American workers, it's been responsible for helping build our middle class, giving countless Americans the chance to provide for their families, sending their kids to college, saving for a secure retirement. It's what hundreds of thousands of auto workers and suppliers and dealers and their families rely on to pay their bills in communities across our industrial Midwest and across the country. It's been a pillar of our industrial economy. I am pleased to announce that Chrysler and Fiat have formed a partnership that has a strong chance of success. It's a partnership that will save more than 30,000 jobs at Chrysler and tens of thousands of jobs at suppliers, dealers, and other businesses that rely on this company. It's a partnership that the federal government will support by making additional loans that are consistent with what I outlined last month. As part of their agreement, every dime of new taxpayer money will be repaid before Fiat can take a majority ownership stake in Chrysler. In addition, considering Chrysler's extensive operations in Canada, the government of Canada is also committing resources to ensure that Chrysler has a chance to succeed, and we're working closely with them. It's a partnership that will give Chrysler a chance not only to survive, but to thrive in a global auto industry. Fiat has demonstrated that it can build the clean, fuel-efficient cars that are the future of the industry, and as part of this agreement, Fiat has already agreed to transfer billions of dollars in cutting-edge technology to Chrysler to help them do the same. Fiat's also committed to working with Chrysler to build new fuel-efficient cars and engines right here in America. Now, this partnership was only possible because of unprecedented sacrifices on the part of Chrysler's stakeholders who are willing to give something up so that this company and all the men and women whose livelihoods depend on it might see a better day.
So, John, let's talk about the alliance with Fiat, its importance, what it's all about.
Great. Well, Congressman, first of all, thank you for allowing me the opportunity. It's great to be with you. The alliance between Chrysler and Fiat is really a terrific opportunity to do a number of things. One is it's critical that we maintain U.S. employment, that we maintain U.S. automotive jobs, and that's the first thing the Chrysler-Fiat alliance does, and I'll take you through a little bit more about that. The second thing it does is it provides American consumers with access to more fuel-efficient vehicle technologies, technologies that are both being developed by Fiat and being developed by Chrysler. So it gives the consumer an opportunity for more choices. The third thing it does is it helps us stabilize the broader supplier and dealer parts of the industry through allowing our dealers to in the future sell Fiat products as well as to be more profitable with Chrysler products. And again, gives our suppliers a more stable base in the United States. And the last thing it does is it gives the U.S. taxpayer an opportunity for a real return on its investment. So for those reasons, you know, it's a very, very good thing for the consumer, for the taxpayer, and for Chrysler employees.
Good. And let's tell our viewers how the two companies complement each other,
Right.
because often when we talk about putting two entities together, they're more competitive than they do complement each other.
This is a great question and a great point. This is really a complementary coming together. We are where they aren't. They are where we aren't. They make smaller vehicles. We specialize, especially recently, in larger vehicles. And so the opportunity to really kind of overlay those opportunities is really a strength of this alliance. For example, with regard to technologies, we, Chrysler, get access to all Fiat's vehicle platforms and powertrain technologies. This is a terrific opportunity for Chrysler. It saves us development time, it saves us money, and it gives us the opportunity to move quickly into emerging market segments in the United States, like very small vehicles, for example. So it's a great opportunity. Another example is that it helps us more fully utilize our manufacturing capacity in the United States. We expect with Fiat to build Fiat vehicles and Fiat powertrains in the United States. And so again,
in the United States.
In the United States. And
that
so
should be emphasized.
Yes, and so it helps us. It helps us stabilize and utilize our manufacturing capacity here. And lastly, the other thing that's a very, very good opportunity is Fiat will be able to market our vehicles, U.S.-built Chrysler vehicles, more effectively overseas. For example, Fiat is very strong in South America and in Brazil. We have products we think that can compete terrifically in that market. Same thing in Western Europe.
And these are vehicles built here.
Vehicles built in the United States for export. Chrysler remains the largest U.S. automotive exporter. We export more vehicles than any other manufacturer. We don't build in foreign countries. We build here and export. And so the Fiat marketing and sales operations in those areas will benefit our manufacturing base.
Excellent. Now let's talk about bankruptcy. The President spoke to that issue.
Yes.
Bankruptcy is often something to be avoided, and we tried to help avoid it here. But the President spoke and said why it was necessary.
Right.
So let's listen to him.
Good.
And while many stakeholders made sacrifices and worked constructively, I have to tell you some did not. In particular, a group of investment firms and hedge funds decided to hold out for the prospect of an unjustified taxpayer-funded bailout. They were hoping that everybody else would make sacrifices and they would have to make none. Some demanded twice the return that other lenders were getting. I don't stand with them. I stand with Chrysler's employees and their families and communities. I stand with Chrysler's management, its dealers, and its suppliers. I stand with the millions of Americans who own and want to buy Chrysler cars. I don't stand with those who held out when everybody else is making sacrifices. And that's why I'm supporting Chrysler's plans to use our bankruptcy laws to clear away its remaining obligations so the company can get back on its feet and onto a path of success. Now, no one should be confused about what a bankruptcy process means. This is not a sign of weakness, but rather one more step on a clearly charted path to Chrysler's revival.
Well, John, you know, before bankruptcy occurred, a lot of us worked to try to convince those who were holding out not to do so. And so they just were adamant, a small group of them, and it threw the company into bankruptcy. So why don't you explain a bit about this whole process, why the people held out, and what happened after that?
Great. Well, first of all, I want to express appreciation and thanks for you and many of your colleagues who spent a long time and effort trying to make sure that we could avoid this. This was not a scenario that was our first choice. But as the President said, it is expected to be a very focused, surgical, controlled, and managed type of process, type of court process that will allow Chrysler to emerge as a vibrant new company in the very near future. So first that point. With regard to how we got to bankruptcy, obviously the President said it, and obviously when we testified before Congress in December, we made it very clear that all of the stakeholders in Chrysler needed to make sacrifices in order to deliver the company back to stability and profitability over the long term, and that means everybody from executives to our colleagues in production, to suppliers, to dealers, to the lenders. And so the expectation was that we would go through a process and we would secure commitments and sacrifices from all these stakeholders. And at the end of the day, we made great progress until we got to the point of securing agreements from all of our lenders.
And that's important because you sat down and negotiated agreements with others who were at the table. Absolutely.
This includes the United Auto Workers. This includes the Canadian Auto Workers in Canada. This includes, as I said, suppliers, dealers, and executives of the company, salaried employees, hourly employees. Everybody came to the table and said, look, here's our commitment and here's our sacrifice to provide support to get Chrysler back on the road to recovery and back on the road to profitability. Fiat brought something to the table as well, $8 to $10 billion worth of technologies immediately available to Chrysler. So everybody's bringing something to the table. So the expectation from the lenders is that they would agree to help us restructure our balance sheet so we didn't have too much debt coming out of the bankruptcy and in exchange for cash or equity stake in the company. There was a small minority of lenders who at the end of the process were not prepared to agree to an offer made by the U.S. Treasury Department and the U.S. government. It was unfortunate, and I think at the end of the day was probably the primary reason why we found ourselves in this bankruptcy filing. What's happened since then?
And then what happened? Those who were holding out came to realize that they were only going to lose.
I think that's right. I think that's right. They
wanted more, but they realized they should have come to the table.
I think that's true. And again, you know, we certainly don't want to treat the whole lender group, all 45 to 50 of them, as a monolith. Some were more ready and willing to get to an agreement, a mutual agreement, than others. But at the point we are now, kind of moving through the bankruptcy, this group of the small minority of lenders who initially objected to the Chrysler Fiat sale in the bankruptcy proceeding has since withdrawn its objection. So I believe we're behind this issue now, and that we're going to have agreement to move forward.
In the next days, what do you foresee the next days?
Well, I think it's a process. Again, as I said, it's a process that's designed and built for speed, and that's our hope and expectation. Our suppliers, our dealers, our employees, our operations depend on moving through this quickly. So our view is that over the next series of days, the bankruptcy judge will proceed through a bidding process that will allow Fiat and Chrysler, as well as other potential bidders, if there are any, to make bids. There will be a closing of that process, and then a review of a sale motion for the Chrysler Fiat alliance, all which we expect would be done by the end of May if everything goes well.
So usually bankruptcy doesn't proceed quickly, but in this case, using a part of the bankruptcy law, essentially Chrysler was forced into this because some of the lenders held back.
That's right.
And now they have agreed.
Correct.
And so the path seems clear to come out of this with a strong, viable Chrysler. You know, our family has been buying minivans for all of the hockey equipment, for all of the soccer equipment, for all the grandchildren. My late beloved wife and I, we moved around in a Chrysler minivan for years, so the future is important. Talking about what's happening now, there has been a shutdown for a period of time.
Yes.
So everybody understands what's going on. Just briefly describe that.
I will do that. We did, starting May 4th, the Monday after the bankruptcy filing, we did close our facilities for a period of, during the period of the bankruptcy, which we expect to be roughly 30 to 60 days relative to the shutdown. This allows us essentially to do two things. One is to help manage the restructuring within the bankruptcy, but also helps us to allow the dealers to reduce their inventories so that when we come out of the bankruptcy and the new company is off and running, that there is demand from the dealers for our vehicles. And so there's pull as opposed to us pushing vehicles. There's demand pull from the dealers and from consumers for the vehicles.
And the suppliers, just briefly, I know there's a real concern about suppliers.
Yes, and this is a concern shared by the U.S. government and the Obama administration as well as by us, and so we are working with the administration to provide support. I should make the point that that most of the money that is flowing from the U.S. Treasury into Chrysler right now is being used to continue to allow us to make our supplier payments, and so we're working with the federal government and with our suppliers to manage this restructuring process, which affects not only us but our suppliers in an orderly fashion. Obviously, when you go from a market of 16 million vehicles a year in 2007 to selling less than 10 million vehicles a year now, there needs to be a continued consolidation, and so we're managing that as effectively as we can.
And I think we'll have a chance to talk about the global picture. And by the way, the suppliers, the Tier 1, are very critical, so Tier 2 and Tier 3, and we're talking, some of us with the Obama administration, about whether there can be some further help to the Tier 2 and the Tier 3. I think it's often neglected, overlooked, that the whole supplier network is so huge, so important, and we can't let it fold. As Chrysler moves forward, we have to be sure there are the suppliers there.
That's
and
true.
I know you very much agree.
We do.
You know, we have a mailbag segment on this show, and so I'd like, John, if we could now take some questions from people at home.
Great.
And so why don't we take question number one. Is from Dennis in St. Clair Shores. And it says, the administration seems to be forcing the auto industry into producing smaller, fuel-efficient vehicles that the buying public really doesn't want, as evidenced by past buying practices. Why doesn't the administration allow the market to dictate what the public wants to buy? After all, it was the high price of gas, $4 plus a gallon, and the credit card crunch created by Wall Street that created this current automotive crisis. Well, it's true there's a credit crisis, and as we sit here, efforts are being made to try to get credit flowing. Also, as you know so well, you and I have been working on this for a long time, it's a global crisis, and other countries have come to help their auto industry, and it was important that we do the same. But I also want to say to Dennis and everybody else, we've talked a lot about cars of the future. And it's important that the auto industry, the domestic auto industry, be in the front. And to the credit of the industry, you began to restructure to begin to produce the cars of the future. That's true of GM. Chrysler's working on it. And now Ford is working hard to catch up. Say just a few words about that.
Well, great, and I appreciate that, Congressman. And I agree with Dennis's point. The market really should dictate what customers ought to be able to buy. That said, we need to be a full-line manufacturer. We need to provide cars and trucks that everybody wants to buy, and we need to be prepared for $2, $2.50, $3 gas, as well as $4 and $5 gas.
It may come back.
Exactly.
Hopefully not.
Exactly. And so here's what we're doing. Number one, the Chrysler-Fiat alliance, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, positions us terrifically to be able to adjust to that market. We are going to, the business agreement between Chrysler and Fiat requires Fiat to produce in the United States a small, high-mileage vehicle. That's going to happen.
In the U.S.
In the U.S. The second thing...
Underlined.
Yes. And the second thing it requires is that Fiat produce a fuel-efficient engine in the United States. And so, and in fact, Fiat needs to do these things in order to qualify for additional equity in the new alliance. So they're built into the agreement, and we fully expect they're going to happen. It's going to allow us to respond to that market again as fuel prices, maybe begin to inch back up again. The second point I want to make about vehicles of the future, and you're very much familiar with these and you've had an opportunity to drive them and be in them, is we have a kind of a company within a company called Envy, which is designed to bring to market very quickly electric drive vehicles. These are both battery electric vehicles as well as what we call range extended electric vehicles. In other words, electric vehicles that have a small engine that's a generator to recharge the battery on the vehicles. We're very excited about these products, and we believe we're going to be very competitive as electrification of the vehicle fleet starts to increase.
And as you know, we hope that the battery cells will be made in the United States, and we put together a program to try to encourage and foster that. Yes,
and if I could add to that with some news perhaps maybe for some of your viewers, and you were instrumental in this, we came to a commercial agreement with a company called A123. They're going to produce, they have proprietary technology that's going to allow us to move very quickly into the segment, and we expect that those battery packs and those cells and the production of those battery components are going to happen in Michigan.
Excellent news. You know, Korea had a head start because their government supported that technology research. We've got to catch up. All right, let's go to question number 2, John. This is from Eric and Warren. How can we be sure that Chrysler will survive and thrive in the new partnership with Fiat? The merger with Daimler left Chrysler a mess, and Cerberus was looking to get rid of Chrysler from day one. What guarantees are being made to create and maintain good-paying jobs? Why don't you answer that?
This is a great question, and I think very, very important that we continue to talk about this going forward. And I mentioned it a little bit just a minute ago, but I want to emphasize it. The structure of the new alliance gives Fiat an initial 20% stake in this new company. In order for Fiat to earn more equity, they actually need to do certain things that will solidify our manufacturing base here. The first thing I mentioned a few minutes ago is they need to produce a high-mileage car in the United States. That supports U.S. employment. That car isn't going to be made someplace else and brought here. The requirement is that they make it here. If they do that, they get an additional 5 points of equity. Second thing that happens is the fuel-efficient engine I mentioned. If they make that fuel-efficient engine here in the United States, that's another 5 points of equity. Third, there is a requirement for an additional 5 points of equity that they effectively produce incremental revenue from this alliance through the marketing and sale of our vehicles built in the United States and other markets. And so those are 3 concrete examples of how the Fiat alliance and its equity stake will deliver and support United States jobs.
And I think in this structure that the President's Auto Task Force has helped put together, there's also some safeguards for the taxpayer.
Yes, this is very important. If I could...
No, please.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think this is very important. First of all, as I mentioned, when you add up all of those numbers I just outlined, Fiat gets to a stake of about 35%. As long as there is U.S. taxpayer money in this alliance, Fiat cannot have a majority ownership stake in Chrysler. And so that's an example of a taxpayer protection where Fiat, if they're able to acquire equity beyond the 35%, that would have to be held in trust, and they would not be able to run, they would not be able to have a majority of the company.
And everybody should know, as we've worked together on this, the survival of the domestic auto industry has been issue number 1 for myself and so many others. We've also been looking at the interests of the taxpayers. Well, let's go to another taxpayer. And this is also from Warren, and it's Michael. I support the cash for clunkers idea as a way to boost car sales. I own an older vehicle and am saving up a down payment for a new Ford Focus. This program would help me buy a new car much sooner and provide a boost to my budget with the current economy. As I mentioned, we've owned Chrysler vans. I also own a Ford Focus. You can answer this by talking about a Chrysler car, but I just want to say that to Michael, I very much agree with you, and we're, as we speak, working on a cash for clunker program, which would give people a voucher when they turn in their old vehicle, and they buy a new vehicle that is more fuel efficient. I think this is a very important program, is it not? Hopefully it will lead to an addition of 1 million vehicles. And as you mentioned, the level of purchases annually used to be at 16. Then it went down to 9 as part of the global crisis, the credit crunch, the economic crisis in the U.S. So, in a word, what would this cash for clunker mean, do you think?
It would be a tremendous boost to auto sales in the United States in general, and in Chrysler in particular. We would estimate, based on the program that you were instrumental in putting together, that probably 70% of our vehicles would apply for in the program. You are fully well aware that countries around the world are doing this. Other countries have already implemented stimulus programs like cash for clunkers to stimulate auto demand domestically in their countries. We need to do this, and we need to do it now. And I think we should not waste any time. And we appreciate and thank you for your leadership in the effort.
Well, demand is critical, right? We want to be sure that there's demand so supply can increase.
That's right.
And so this effort, the President said so well. By the way, he also said to people, as we heard earlier, I hope if you buy a car, it's an American car. But there's been leadership here to make sure that the auto industry survives, including Chrysler, and now with its alliance with Fiat. So, John, thanks for joining me today. We've had many moments together, some difficult moments. Hopefully the future looks brighter. Thanks again, and to our viewers, thanks for joining us today. This is an important subject to all of Michigan. Indeed, it's an important subject to the whole nation. The thriving of the domestic auto industry helped make the middle class, and the future of this country economically depends on a continuation of that thriving automobile industry.